Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. With this video, we discuss my thoughts on episode 15 of Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery, Will You Take My Hand? For all intents and purposes, the Season 1 finale. And, you know, I practically was questioning myself as to whether or not I should do this video, hearkening back to that age-old adage, you know, if you have nothing nice to say, maybe you don't say anything at all. I'm just going to put it out there, brass tacks. This is one man's opinion. As somebody who has loved the majority of Star Trek Discovery, even going back to the first two episodes, the opening two-parter, which a lot of people will tell you to the nth degree they thought was horrible and horrid, and it should have started at episode 3 and everything like that. I really enjoyed the opening two-parter. You know, I'm somebody who's had a love-hate relationship with some of the episodes. Definitely had some issues with certain episodes here and there, but by and large, in the majority, I have loved Star Trek Discovery for what it's given us. And saying that, this episode not only is a singular, self-contained episode, but an episodic chapter in the entirety of the narrative. I feel like they dropped the ball. I feel like this was really kind of disappointing. Not even kind of. It was underwhelming to me, and I don't know what I was expecting, but this wasn't it. You know, so much of this episode harkened back to me the very first episode, the pilot from Star Trek Enterprise. Only they're going, you know, instead of whatever alien planet they went to in that one, they've gone to Quo'noS here, and you have Orions who are kind of sort of green, but it looks more like, rather than makeup, it looks more like color tinting, you know, and it's not quite green in indoor settings. It's more of like a bluish green, kind of, sort of. You have Clint Howard, who's like, it would have been cool seeing him earlier on, maybe as one of, you know, Harry Mudd's posse or something like that. I just, you know, a lot of this episode I had to beg the question, well, why now? Why now all of a sudden? A lot of the stuff going on in this episode, this is the finale. This is what we've been building up to the entire season long. And almost everything in this episode felt like amateur hour, like very, you know, this should have been episode 3 in the first season of a burgeoning Star Trek series. A lot of this stuff, you know, this Orion trading post area where all these other people were like, correct me if I'm wrong, this was supposed to be on Quo'noS. They're allowing humans and other aliens to co-inhabit this small trading space, and they, you know, they're at war with human beings, but they don't have a problem if there's human beings there. That was a little confusing. Maybe I missed something. Again, you have sequences kind of like that with you know, women dancing, alien women dancing, and you know, an alien comes up to, like, you know, Reed and whoever it was, Trip or something, and like, I can set you up with those women. I mean, we kind of have a similar thing going on here with Emperor Georgiou in the guise of Captain Georgiou, delighting herself, having some fun with the local gentry, and you know, getting some private dances, Tina Turner style. And I don't know, man. It just, the entire, like, you know, everything about this episode, everything about the plotting, with the exception of the overhanging thread that we pick up with where we left off in the previous episode, Georgiou being, you know, classified as Captain Georgiou, back from the dead, or presumed dead, taking command of this mission, which seemed like a misstep anyway, and turned out to be wholeheartedly by the time this episode's done. You know, that whole aspect of, okay, we're going to go to Quo'noS, we're going to sort of spore into the underground caverns of these, you know, vacant, long dead volcanoes and whatever. Like, I didn't quite know if I was going to wrap my mind around that, you know, have a good time with that. And so they do that. It's a workable thing, but you know, then there has to be so much legwork that has to be done to accomplish this mission, and they got to find a shrine and whatever else, whatever other malarkey they can shoehorn in. I think this episode had 3 screenwriters, or conceivers of the story, and you could tell it was all over the place. It was a bunch of different ideas commingling, sort of trying to vie for attention. And so, okay, they beam down, and Giorgio wants to have Tilly, blah, 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 who's back to her oafish sort of characterization. And I love how it's like a Dumb and Dumber, sort of comedy reference halfway through. She opens the thing, it's supposed to be a drone, and it's not a drone. Shh, it's not a drone. Yuck, yuck, waka, waka. She's getting high with Clint Howard, who, it was, like I say, it was cool seeing him, but it feels like a throwback, the kind of throwback that should have been earlier in the season. It didn't make sense for a finale. Like, why is this the way when the producers or the writers promised, they were quoted somewhere as, promising us that things will much more closely align to TOS, to the Star Trek we remember. In what way exactly? Like throwbacks to the original series, and Clint Howard. A lot of this series feels like it's kind of a more through line continuation from Star Trek Enterprise. Even down, I'm getting ahead of myself, but even down to the final sort of reveal, when everything is said and done, and we have the NCC 1701, or at least an approximation thereupon, of that, endless, timeless classic, my favorite of all the Enterprises, because it's like a hybridization of the NX-01 era with the warp nacelles, the blue and the glow, and the red, the orbs, the Bussard collectors. They have little containment sort of pieces around it, and the whole warp nacelle with the blue, the glowing blue inside, internally to the ship, but then the stanchions that hold them up is more the motion picture movie era, and the overall like hull plating is kind of like a hybridization of what we're used to with TOS, but also Discovery. It was kind of all over the place, but it looked like they've done a NX-01 refit. It was, I think it was something that was proposed for if Enterprise proper, Star Trek Enterprise, the series, had gone to a 5th season or something. More and more they would have modified and refitted the NX-01 to more closely approximate the NCC 1701 Constitution class style. You'd still have the NX-01, but they would add a secondary hull down underneath it, and it kind of looked a little weird because they would still have the impulse engines hanging like halfway off the back of the NX-01 part, and then underneath it would be a whole, second thing. It would make it look like a third thing, kind of, sort of. So that's kind of what this version of the 1701 Enterprise looks like. It looks more like, the natural progression of the NX-01 refit, but then more formatted closely to what eventually the motion picture version of the 1701 Enterprise would look like. And I don't have that big of a deal, that big of a problem with that. It's just, it dropped the ball as far as where it seemed everything was aligning. I was half expecting, some big, grandiose, explosive, action-packed kind of thing. And we just get a, first season, second, third, or fourth episode trip to an alien sort of, like an alien trading spot or something like that. Again, the only thing that really, really thoroughly was holding my interest was the question of, okay, what are they going to do? How are they going to finish this up? How are they going to finish the war? The war with the Klingons, where they wiped the floor with the Federation. People are talking time travel and reset button, speculatory, discussion-wise, building up to this, going into this. And I said I would kind of sort of have more respect for them if they don't cop out in any of those such ways. If they make the war come to an end, come to a conclusion through more manual, laborious means kind of thing. It kind of reminded me of Doctor Who a little bit, as a fan of Doctor Who and the Doctor being one of my heroes. the 12th incarnation of the Doctor, as portrayed by Peter Capaldi, I think it was in Series 9, in a Zygon two-parter. Zygons being shapeshifters who can take on the appearance of other people and such like that. There's this whole aspect of a looming war between all of humanity and the Zygons, and they are trying to infest our world and, take over people's lives and whatever like that. The Doctor and other organizations want to try to let everyone coexist, but there is one rogue element amongst the Zygons who really just wants to destroy all, lay waste to all humanity, and take over the Earth. And so the Doctor says, he kind of gets them pitted against each other, backs against the wall, and he's like, when are you ever going to realize that what you should have been doing from the beginning is talking? Instead of all this needless bloodshed, innocents caught in the fire going back and forth between you, when are you going to realize you just needed to sit down and talk, come to a mutual compromise, coexist? And there's elements of how this all came to its fruition that sort of speak to that. Rather than Georgiou getting away with planting a catastrophic, cataclysmic, apocalyptic bomb that would destroy the entirety of Quo'noS. And for a minute, when they show the simulation, they fake out the viewer. They're watching a simulation, you see the planet start exploding, and I thought, oh, so it is a reset button thing, because they're not going to let that stand. They're not going to destroy Quo'noS, a la, what happened to Romulus in the Abrams movies. And so I thought, okay, it is going to be time travel, but no, it's just a simulation. But they Burnham goes and finagles that bomb out of Georgiou's, capable hands, destructive hands, in a really sort of mealy-mouthed way, a sort of measly way, like, oh, you're going to have to watch me die, and with how all the pomp and the self-assuredness, the cocksuredness of Emperor Georgiou. And she just automatically, like with Burnham holding that gun, that phaser or whatever the hell it was, pulse weapon, to her chest, you're going to have to watch me die all over again. And then the little quip, oh, and also you're going to be chased after for the rest of your life by the Federation. They're going to be constantly gunning for you. Otherwise, take your freedom and go. And then they give the bomb to L'Rell, which narratively is interesting, narratively makes sense, but because of all of the rest of the plotting, because of all of the rest of the environment, just felt underwhelming. Felt like, oh, so much fan fiction to me. Like I said, throwing in Clint Howard, a reference not only to the original series, but he's been in Star Trek other places. And it would have been great to see him in any other capacity all throughout the course of this show. Why was he there now? Why were the Orions introduced? Why was there an Andorian, one singular Andorian we've seen for the past few episodes? It's the same one, but from both Mirror Universe and the Prime Universe, or whatever, universe this is. Which apparently, even though we were promised everything was going to align, pseudo-align, it is a visual reboot. There's no more ands, ifs, or buts about it. They pretty much put the cap on the bottle, finally. No more question. Because none of the Klingons on the home planet, on the home world Quo'noS, looked like the old-style Klingons. They don't have to. I don't mind it. I don't mind a whole sort of visual reboot. I didn't mind the NX-01 sort of motion picture era hybridization Enterprise and all that stuff. The reference to Captain Pike. I love the reference to Archer, the NX-01 Enterprise, in the previous episode. These things I don't mind. I don't have much of an issue with. Do I wish they more so aligned with what was familiar? Sure. As a Trekkie, sure. As someone who holds the original series as my favorite #1 Star Trek, sure. I would love that. I would have eaten that up. Star Trek continues all the way, man. But I didn't have as devout, crazy Trekkie, Trekker, fanboy, a reaction, a hateful, spiteful reaction to the things that were oh so different, I wanted good characterization, good storytelling. And for the most part, starting with that opening two-parter, the opening pilot, pilot Mark 1 to certain people, because the third episode is pilot Mark 2 to others, you know, in the majority, I've enjoyed everything that they've done in this season. I have had qualms. I have come on and just talked at length about things that didn't sit well with me from time to time, but I was much more fanboying excitedly by the characterization, by the drama, by the twists and turns, by, you know, different things here and there. And I just feel like, you know, they set up this penultimate, grandiose in scope, you know, movie in scope sort of quandary. This looming war, a war where the Klingons had wiped the floor with the Federation. It was building and building and building. And then at the last fleeting moment, it's like all boiled down to a barn in a desert somewhere, where people are just pushing each other back and forth, and it just becomes the character drama. All of the time spent with Ash and Burnham and her recollecting her past, these are all intriguing things, but we're dealing with the overarching plot of the war and how this is going to be resolved. And then it becomes sort of secondary to the character drama. Oh, I'm just going to force Emperor Georgiou to back down. I'm going to force that bomb out of her hand. I'm just going to hand it off to L'Rell. L'Rell's just going to participate and play along and try to reforge the Klingon Empire. And it's all easy breezy Japanesey and everything works out happily ever after. Accommodations for all of the crew of the Discovery. And this is what the hell was with the editing in that final scene? Cutting back and forth between Burnham and the Admiral issuing out these awards, these exemplary awards for our crew and our heroes and whatever. Like back and forth. Pick one, choose one. Don't keep intercutting. The rhythm was all off. And then we see the crowd and, you know, there aren't any sort of proper Star Trek uniforms there in the crowd at all whatsoever. A few times, you know, you have Burnham at the very end being approached by her adoptive mother Amanda, by Sarek, who's commending her once again. And, you know, there's that one point where you see Sarek in the background and there's a guy holding an umbrella silhouetted, and I'm like, ooh, wouldn't it be awesome if that was Spock? Oh, we get a name check, Captain Pike. We see a version of the Enterprise, but, you know, I mean, I wanted excitement. I wanted to be gobsmacked. I wanted to be surprised and excited and then just bouncing off the walls, and everything was so very tepid and downplayed, and it was more the character drama, and like we couldn't have had the resolution or a resolution amidst a war or a conflict that involved time travel. I would have taken time travel at this point. As long as, you know, there's like a firefight surrounding these, you know, almost seeming deathbed confessions between these characters where they finally understand each other. They finally come to amends of some sort. And then, you know, it built everything up to this grand, exalted, exuberant, exciting thing. And then it just petered out. And let me just say, as I wrap up this video, as I wrap up this discussion, this is just my first reaction. And if you've been watching any of my Star Trek Discovery discussion videos, I have said from time to time that upon subsequent watches of these episodes, like my sister did not join me for watching this one, at some point I will watch it again with her. On every subsequent rewatch, when I know everything that's going to be coming and everything for the episodes that I was wholly disappointed by, I enjoy them that much more. So there's every possibility that I will suddenly see this as a finale and as a very moving and you know, compelling tale of characterization and depth and morality, and be so excited by it. There may be a time where when I see that sort of hybridization NX-01, the motion picture era Enterprise, I might be jumping off the rooftop. You know, I might be blasting through the roof, excited that there it is. We finally got to see it. This is something we wanted to see. But because of the tepid, really underwhelming nature of the entirety of this finale, how it wrapped everything up so underwhelmingly, like I say, I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. And because of that, I couldn't even be excited about that. We saw the Enterprise, at least a version of it. And I couldn't even be excited about it because I was like, what the hell was all the rest of that? And they're on their way to Vulcan, and they're going to get a new captain. Saru's still the acting captain. Michael's reinstated. Blah. Meh. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of the finale episode of Star Trek Discovery Season 1. If you had a completely different reaction to it, our POVs can certainly disagree. If you were bouncing off the walls, if you were excited and completely wrapped with you know, all due attention and salivation and excitement and all that kind of stuff. Completely enraptured by the twists and turns and surprises that really weren't surprising and all that kind of stuff. Let me know that in the comments below. But of course, if you had a similar reaction to mine, where it was just kind of like, you know, a deflated balloon by the end, and this is where we end up, let me know that as well. Because most assuredly, I'm usually off by myself with my reactions along these lines. When I'm excited about stuff, most people aren't excited about it. When I'm not excited about stuff, that seems to be the stuff everyone loves. So I'd love to hear anyone who just happens to share my appraisal of this episode. Otherwise, I guess, you know, I don't know how long we're going to be waiting for Season 2. Some people have said not till 2019, and it's like... But we'll see. We'll see what happens, and, you know, I hope to hear from you. I hope you had a better time with this than I did, and hopefully I will have a better time with it upon subsequent viewings. Until then, until sometime when we have more Star Trek news in the future, you know, you can always check out my anime stuff and my Doctor Who stuff and whatever else that I happen to upload. And that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. Live long and prosper, my friends. Peace.